The rain came down in sheets, lashing against the farmhouse windows with such force I thought the glass might crack. I'd only been living in my grandfather's old place for 3 months, since inheriting it after his passing. The remoteness that had initially offered peace now felt isolating as I watched lightning split the darkening sky. My phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Severe thunderstorm warning for Oak Ridge County. Power outages expected. Stay indoors. Perfect. Just what I needed on a Friday night. I'd barely finished reading when the lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The sudden silence was jarring. No hum of the refrigerator, no murmur of the TV I'd left on for background noise. Just the storm and me. Great, I muttered, reaching for the flashlight I kept in the kitchen drawer. The beam cut through the darkness as I made my way through the house, checking windows for leaks. Grandpa had mentioned the east side had problems during heavy rain. The old place creaked and moaned under the assault of the wind. Sounds I was still getting used to after years of apartment living. When I reached the mudroom by the side entrance, I noticed water seeping under the door. Sighing, I pulled it open to check the drainage gutter, sweeping my flashlight across the small concrete step. That's when I saw them. Fresh, muddy footprints leading from the gravel road directly to the house. My breath caught. I'd been home all day and hadn't had any visitors. These weren't my prints. I slammed the door shut and twisted the deadbolt, heart suddenly pounding. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe someone had come by earlier and I hadn't heard them knock over the sound of my shower. But deep down, I knew better. Those prints were fresh, the mud still wet. I moved quickly through the house, checking every lock twice. The farmhouse had too many entry points. The front door, side door, back door leading to the garden, basement storm doors, and numerous ground floor windows. Most had old locks that probably hadn't been changed since the 90s. As I finished securing the front door, I heard it. A faint scratching at the dining room window. I froze, flashlight beam trembling in my hand. Scratch, scratch. Then silence. I turned off my flashlight and pressed my back against the wall, straining to listen over the rain. There it was again. The unmistakable sound of someone testing the back door handle, turning it slowly. My phone showed no service bars. The landline was dead when I lifted it. The storm had knocked out both. I was completely alone. The footsteps moved to the porch now. Slow, deliberate. Whoever was out there wasn't trying very hard to be quiet anymore. They were checking each window methodically. They knew I was alone. They knew the power was out. And they clearly knew the house. My mind raced to Grandpa's stories about rural break-ins, how isolated homes were prime targets during storms when alarms wouldn't work and help couldn't come quickly. I needed to think. I needed to prepare. From the kitchen, I gathered pots and pans, positioning them precariously near doors and windows, makeshift alarms that would clatter if disturbed. I found string in Grandpa's junk drawer and tied it across hallway entrances with empty soup cans attached. Low tech, but it might buy me precious seconds of warning. Upstairs, I remembered Grandpa's old hunting rifle mounted above the fireplace. I hadn't touched it since moving in. Wasn't even sure if it was operational or if there was ammunition. My hands shook. I lifted it down and checked the chamber. Empty. But the small wooden box on the mantel contained shells. Dusty, but usable. I loaded the rifle with trembling fingers, trying to remember what little I knew about firearms from the few hunting trips Grandpa had taken me on as a teenager. The scratching had stopped, but occasionally I heard footsteps circling the house. They were looking for a way in, testing each potential entrance. Around 2:30 a.m., the storm reached its peak. Thunder boomed directly overhead as rain pounded the roof like machine gun fire. I had positioned myself in the upstairs hallway, rifle across my lap, flashlight off to preserve batteries. At precisely 3:17 a.m., I remembered checking my watch. The alarm of pans I'd set up by the basement door crashed with a deafening clatter. Someone was inside. My stomach dropped as I heard hushed voices now, Not one intruder, but multiple. I hadn't prepared for that. With panic rising in my throat, I retreated to the attic access in the ceiling of the guest bedroom closet. My grandfather had shown me once how the small crawlspace extended over most of the second floor. Good place to hide Christmas presents, he'd joked. Now, it might save my life. I pulled myself up, rifle first, then quietly slid the access panel mostly closed behind me. The space was cramped and dusty, insulation fibers tickling my face as I positioned myself near a small gap between boards. Below, flashlight beams swept across the hallway. 2, then 3 distinct lights. I held my breath. "Check upstairs first," a gruff voice ordered. "Electronics, jewelry, cash, the usual." "What about the owner?" a younger voice asked. "Alone, some city guy who inherited the place, probably hiding under his bed." They knew about me. They'd been watching the house. The footsteps creaked on the stairs, getting closer. Methodical. I could track their movements by the sweep of flashlights and the sounds of drawers being opened, closets searched. When they entered the bedroom directly beneath me, I had a clear view through the crack between floorboards. 3 men in dark rain gear, faces partially covered by bandanas. One held what looked like a crowbar. "Found his phone," one said, holding up my iPhone, "and car keys." "Where the hell is he?" the largest man growled, yanking open the closet door just below my hiding spot. "If he looked up, maybe he left before the storm," the younger one suggested. "His car's still here. Keep looking." As they moved to the next room, I heard the distinct sound of furniture being overturned. Their frustration at not finding me was escalating into destruction. Glass shattered, wood splintered. I remained frozen in the attic crawlspace, rifle clutched to my chest, barely breathing. Hours passed this way, listening to them tear apart my home. Occasionally, they'd use radios to communicate with someone outside. Around 5 a.m., as the first hint of dawn lightened the sky, I heard new voices. More people had arrived. Through the small vent in the attic wall, I could make out the shapes of 2 pickup trucks in the front yard. "Time to pack it up," the gruff voice called. "Get everything loaded before daylight." For the next hour, I listened as they systematically emptied my house of anything valuable. My TV, computer, Grandpa's antique clock collection, even kitchen appliances. The precious morning light filtering through the vent showed them making trip after trip to the trucks. No longer quiet, no longer cautious. Finally, engines started, car doors slammed, voices faded. I waited another full hour before daring to move. My body was stiff and aching from being contorted in small space. Carefully, rifle still ready, I lowered myself back into the bedroom and made my way downstairs. Shush, the destruction was worse than I'd imagined. Furniture upended, cushions slashed open, picture frames smashed. Even the refrigerator door hung open, food scattered across the kitchen floor. On the kitchen table lay something that hadn't been there before. A piece of paper held down by my grandfather's old pepper mill. A note, written in crude block letters. "Next time, we'll knock." My hands shook as I drove into town as soon as the roads cleared. The sheriff's deputy took my report with a grim expression I'll never forget. "Third one, this month," he said, shaking his head. "They hit isolated properties during storms, when the power's out and communications are down. Well-organized crew. They hit the Hanson's place about 3 miles east of you, and the old Taylor farm too." I had the locks changed that afternoon. Within a week, I'd installed a proper security system with battery backup, motion-activated lights, and a generator powerful enough to run essential systems. I adopted a German Shepherd from the county shelter, a retired police dog named Rex, who sleeps at the foot of my bed every night. But some things can't be fixed with locks and alarms. I've kept Grandpa's rifle, cleaned and ready. I've practiced until I can load it in the dark. And I still wake up during every storm, listening for the sound of tires on gravel, watching the window for headlights. Because I know they meant it. They'll be back, and next time, I'll be ready. The rain hammered against the windows of the security office as I settled in for another quiet night at quantum dynamics research. The facility, a sprawling complex of sleek glass and steel nestled in an industrial park 20 miles outside of town, was practically deserted at this hour. Just how I liked it. "Weather's getting worse, Paul," said Martinez, the day shift lead, zipping up his jacket as he prepared to leave. "They're saying it could be the worst storm in a decade." "Nothing I haven't handled before," I replied, taking my seat at the main console. "Drive safe." As Martinez's headlights disappeared down the long access road, I began my first round of system checks. Quantum Dynamics wasn't just any research facility. It housed some of the most advanced prototype technology in the country. My job was simple: make sure nothing got in or out without authorization. 3 hours into my shift, the storm intensified. Lightning flashed across the sky in blinding streaks, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the building's foundation. I was logging the hourly security report when it happened: a massive crack of lightning, a deafening boom, and then darkness. Total darkness. I waited for the familiar hum of the backup generators. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, nothing. "That's not right," I muttered, grabbing my flashlight. The generator should have kicked in automatically within 3 seconds of power loss. I keyed my radio. "Supervisor Knox, this is Paul at the QD facility. We've lost main power and the backups aren't engaging. Over." Knox's voice crackled through after a moment's delay. "Copy that, Paul. Are the emergency protocols in place?" "Affirmative. I'm initiating manual checks of all secure areas now. ETA on the response team." "That's going to be a problem," Knox replied, his voice breaking up slightly. "Storm's taken down power lines across 3 counties. Emergency services are stretched thin. It might be a while before we can get someone out to you." "Understood. I'll maintain hourly radio contact." I grabbed my security tablet, thankful for its battery power, and headed out to begin my rounds. The main corridors were bathed in the dim red glow of emergency lighting, casting long shadows across the polished floors. According to protocol, I needed to check each secure zone, starting with the perimeter and working my way inward. That's when I noticed the first red flag. The east wing exterior door was ajar, just slightly, but enough to send a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the rain blowing in. These doors were designed to automatically seal during power failures. Someone had deliberately overridden that function. My hand moved to the holster at my hip as I slowly pushed the door closed and continued my sweep. In the lobby, the security monitor bank was still functioning on battery power, displaying grainy footage of various locations throughout the facility. I froze when I saw the main gate camera feed. The heavy reinforced gate was sliding open, but there were no vehicles visible. No emergency response team. No maintenance crews. Nothing. I keyed my radio again. "Knox, are you sure no teams have been dispatched yet? The main gate is opening." Static hissed for several seconds before Knox's voice returned. "Negative, Paul. No teams have been cleared to approach your location. Storm damage is severe between town and the complex." My pulse quickened as I switched the monitor to the research wing. The camera showed only darkness, but something about it didn't feel right. I needed to check it personally. The research wing was at the heart of the facility, accessible only through 2 secured checkpoints. I passed through the first using my security badge, which still worked on the emergency power system. The second required a key code, which I entered carefully, aware that after 3 incorrect attempts, the system would trigger a complete lockdown. The heavy door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the darkened laboratory beyond. My flashlight beam cut through the shadows, illuminating rows of workstations and specialized equipment. At first glance, everything appeared normal, until I heard the faint sound of movement from the server room at the far end of the lab. I crept forward, staying close to the wall, my flashlight now turned off. As I approached the server room, I could see light spilling from beneath the door, not emergency lighting, but the blue glow of portable LED work lamps. And voices, low, urgent professional. I edged closer to the partially open door and peered inside. 5 people in dark clothing moved with practiced efficiency around the room. They wore no identifying uniforms, but their actions were clear. They were systematically downloading data from the main servers and disconnecting specific pieces of equipment. One of them, a tall woman with close-cropped hair, was directing the others while consulting what looked like a facility schematic. "Hurry up with that transfer," she said sharply, tapping her watch, an expensive analog piece that seemed oddly out of place with her tactical gear. "We've got 30 minutes before the secondary systems tried to restart." They knew the facility's protocols. This was no opportunistic break-in. This was a planned operation using the storm as cover. I must have shifted my weight or made some slight noise because the woman's head suddenly snapped up. Our eyes met across the room. For a split second, nobody moved. Then, the woman's expression shifted seamlessly into a mask of professional concern. "Ah, you must be the security officer on duty," she said, stepping forward. She unconsciously straightened the cuff of her sleeve over her watch, a gesture that seemed practiced, almost ritualistic. "I'm Agent Reese, Corporate Security. We're conducting an emergency protocol test." I remained in the doorway, one hand still near my holster. I wasn't informed of any test scheduled for tonight. "It wouldn't be much of a test if you were expecting us, would it?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Instead, they remained calculating, assessing. "We're assessing response times during power failures." "I'll need to verify that with my supervisor," I said evenly. "And I'll need to see identification with this month's security passcode." Her smile faltered for just an instant. "Of course." She reached slowly into her pocket and produced an ID card that looked authentic enough at first glance. "As for the passcode," she paused, her fingers again brushing over her watch face. "I believe it's Nighthawk 615. Wrong. This month's code was Avalanche 438. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The other team members stopped what they were doing and turned toward me. I could see now that at least 2 of them had holstered weapons. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, backing slowly toward the door. "I just need to radio this in for confirmation." "I'm afraid we can't let you do that," Reese said, her friendly demeanor evaporating. One of her associates was already moving to block my exit. "This would go much easier if you cooperated." Her voice took on a harder edge, precise, clipped consonants that hinted at military training beneath the corporate veneer. I made a split-second decision and lunged backward through the doorway, slamming and locking the server room door behind me. It wouldn't hold them for long, but it might buy me enough time to alert someone. I sprinted down the corridor, keying my radio as I ran. "Knox, security breach in progress. Multiple unauthorized personnel in the server room downloading data." The radio crackled, but Knox's voice sounded oddly calm. "Paul? Where are you exactly?" Something in his tone made me hesitate before answering. An awful suspicion began to form in my mind. "Just reaching the main corridor," I lied, ducking into a side hallway instead. "I'm heading for the emergency exit." "Stay where you are," Knox ordered. "I've got people coming to assist you." I was certain now Knox was involved. That explained the conveniently failed generators, his insistence that no help was coming, and his strange lack of concern about the open gate. I switched off my radio and moved deeper into the building, using service corridors and maintenance passages that weren't on the main facility schematics. My mind raced through my options. Cell service was always spotty out here, and now I could see on my phone that there was no signal at all. They must be using a jammer. The emergency phones would be the first thing they disabled. Then I remembered something. An old maintenance office near the building's core that still had an analog landline for the obsolete HVAC system. If it was still connected, I might be able to call out. I made my way there by memory, avoiding the main hallways. The facility's labyrinthine layout, usually a frustration during routine patrols, was now my greatest advantage. Behind me, I could hear voices and the beam of flashlights as the intruders spread out to search for me. The maintenance office was cramped and dusty, clearly unused for months. To my relief, the old beige phone on the wall still had a dial tone. I quickly punched in the emergency number for the county sheriff. "This is Paul Mercer, night security at Quantum Dynamics Research Facility," I whispered when the dispatcher answered. "We have an active break-in situation with multiple armed intruders. Power is out, communications are being jammed, and I believe they may have inside help." "We'll dispatch units immediately," the dispatcher assured me. "But with the storm conditions, it could be at least 40 minutes before they reach you." 40 minutes. I had to stall them somehow. I needed to be strategic. With limited time and resources, I had to maximize chaos while preserving my advantage of knowing the building better than they did. I headed for the facility's central maintenance control room, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Inside the control room, I used my security override to access the manual backup systems. First, I activated the fire containment protocol for the East Wing, causing a series of heavy steel doors to slam shut, effectively cutting off 3 of their team members from the others. Through the emergency cameras, I watched them pound futilely against the barriers, unable to rejoin their colleagues. Next, I targeted the ventilation system, reversing the airflow in specific sections. The sudden pressure change sent papers flying and created a disorienting howl through certain corridors. Nothing dangerous, but certainly unnerving and confusing to anyone trying to navigate unfamiliar territory. The radio I'd kept clipped to my belt crackled to life. "Enough games, Mr. Security Guard," Reese's voice came through, her cool demeanor now edged with frustration. "Very clever with the containment doors. Former military, are you? Not many rent-a-cops know how to think tactically." There was something almost like respect in her voice, before it hardened again. "But you're only delaying the inevitable." I didn't respond, but her assessment surprised me. She'd correctly guessed my background from just my defensive tactics. 4 years Army Rangers before civilian life. It made me wonder about her own history. My final move was my riskiest. I accessed the electrical control panel and manually triggered a reset of the emergency lighting system. For 30 crucial seconds, the entire facility was plunged into absolute darkness. In that interval of blindness, I slipped out of the control room and headed toward the one place I might be able to send an additional distress signal, the communications hub on the 2nd floor. I had just reached the stairwell when a voice behind me said, "That's far enough." I turned slowly to find Reese standing 15 feet away, her pistol aimed steadily at my chest. Unlike her team members, who had been stumbling around cursing when the lights went out, she had navigated the darkness with ease. Her watch, which I now noticed had an unusual, luminous face, glinted in the dim emergency lighting that had resumed. "Former Special Forces?" I guessed, buying time. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Something like that." She gestured with her free hand, and I noticed a thin scar running from her wrist up her forearm, the kind of mark left by field surgery, not hospital care. "British SAS consultant now. Private sector pays better, especially when you have—" She paused, her expression momentarily distant. "Expensive obligations." For just a second, I glimpsed something beyond the professional facade, perhaps a flicker of regret, or something personal driving her beyond just the paycheck, but it vanished quickly as she refocused. "Your supervisor should be joining us shortly," she said, her voice returning to its clipped efficiency. "He's quite disappointed in your lack of cooperation." From behind me, another voice spoke. "Paul, stop making this difficult." I turned to see Knox himself stepping out of the shadows, also armed. "You," I said, the betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. "Why?" Knox shrugged. "Do you have any idea what some of the tech in this building is worth on the open market? More money than I'd make in 3 lifetimes of babysitting this place." "The generators," I said, understanding now. "You disabled them." "Among other things," he replied. "Now, we need access to the prototype storage vault, and you're going to help us with the biometric lock." They marched me at gunpoint to the vault entrance, a reinforced door requiring both keycard access and fingerprint verification. With no choice, I placed my thumb on the scanner and watched as a heavy door slid open to reveal racks of prototype devices and components. "Excellent," Reese said, directing her team to begin carefully packing the items into specialized cases. She checked her watch again, that same deliberate gesture before adding, "20 minutes, people, then we're gone." I noticed her lingering look at one particular prototype, a small medical device in a clear case. Something flickered in her eyes that seemed more personal than professional interest. "Specialized care isn't cheap, is it?" I ventured, making an educated guess based on her earlier comment about expensive obligations and her interest in the medical device. Her head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing dangerously. "Careful," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Don't mistake professional courtesy for weakness. This isn't personal for me. It's just a job." But the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted her watch told a different story. "Knox kept his gun trained on me while the others worked. Nothing personal, Paul. You were just supposed to be knocked out when they arrived. Had to improvise when you started causing trouble." "And what happens to me now?" I asked, already guessing the answer. Before Knox could respond, a new sound cut through the air. The wail of the facility's perimeter alarm, followed by the thud of the main doors being breached. "What the hell is that?" Knox demanded, momentarily distracted. I knew exactly what it was. When backup power remained offline for more than 90 minutes, the facility's autonomous security protocol would activate, sending an alert directly to corporate headquarters via satellite uplink, a system completely separate from the regular communications network. That would be the real corporate security, I said. What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion. Knox swung his gun back toward me as shouts echoed from the corridor outside. I lunged for the emergency containment switch on the wall behind me, a last resort measure designed to seal and secure the vault in case of attempted theft. Knox fired, the bullet grazing my shoulder as I slammed my palm against the switch. Bulletproof shields began descending from the ceiling as alarms blared. In the chaos, I caught a final glimpse of Reese. Unlike her panicking colleagues, she maintained her composure, eyes meeting mine with something like professional acknowledgement before she barked orders at her team to secure what they could. I dove through the narrowing gap as Knox fired again, this time the bullet striking my leg, sending white-hot pain shooting up my body. I collapsed on the other side just as the shield sealed completely, trapping Knox and the others inside. Security personnel in tactical gear swarmed the corridor, securing me and calling for medical assistance. "The vault," I gasped, fighting to stay conscious through the pain. 5 intruders, trapped inside. The following days passed in a haze of hospital rooms and police interviews. The investigation revealed the full scope of the operation, a meticulously planned heist orchestrated by a rival tech company, targeting Quantum Dynamics' newest prototypes. Knox had been on their payroll for months, providing inside information and disabling security measures at critical moments. The storm had simply provided the perfect cover. During my debriefing, I learned that Reese, whose real name was Margaret Hayward, had indeed been former British Special Forces before going private. Unlike the others, she refused to cooperate with authorities, maintaining strict professional silence. The only personal detail that emerged was found on her watch, an engraved message. "To Father, with love. All my days." Oh. The mystery of her expensive obligations remained unsolved. 2 weeks later, still on crutches from my gunshot wound, I was summoned to meet with the company's chief of security. "What you did that night saved the company billions in intellectual property," he said, sliding a folder across the desk toward me. "We'd like to offer you a position on our actual security response team. Better pay, better training, and..." He smiled slightly. "Better colleagues." I opened the folder to find an employment contract and, beneath it, a small satellite communicator. "Standard issue for all our team members now," he explained. "Works anywhere, anytime, regardless of what the weather's doing." I thought about that long night, the darkness, the isolation, the betrayal, and picked up the pen to sign. These days, I still work the night shift, but things are different now. I've helped redesign the facility's security systems with multiple redundancies. The generators are tested weekly, and no matter how clear the forecast, I never start a shift without checking that the satellite communicator is securely fastened to my belt. Some lessons you only need to learn once. I wasn't out there looking for trouble. I just needed to disappear for a while. After the divorce, after the move, after the long, quiet unraveling of a life I'd spent a decade building, I wanted the kind of silence only the woods could give me. No phones, no voices. No buildings pressing in from all sides. No neighbors asking if I was okay. I drove north with a cooler full of jerky, a tent, a second-hand rifle, and the coordinates for Dead Elk Ridge, a stretch of wilderness I used to hunt with my dad when I was a kid. It wasn't on many maps anymore. The trails were faint, the signs rusted or missing, but I remembered enough. It felt like the right kind of lost. My dad used to call it the edge of nowhere. That was the appeal. The first 2 days were peaceful. Cold, quiet, and still. I tracked deer through the brush, spotted a bear at a distance, and spent the nights by the fire letting the silence settle into my bones. I didn't see another soul. I didn't expect to. My GPS still had signal, and even though my phone didn't, I told a friend I'd be off grid for a week. It all felt safe enough, familiar even. Then, just before sunrise, on the third day, a deep boom rolled through the forest. It came from far off, low, guttural, like the earth itself cracked open for a second and then closed again. A pressure wave moved through the ground a second before it hit. I stood up fast, listening. It wasn't thunder. It was sharper, more deliberate, like something had ruptured. The woods were still after that. Not in the normal way. No bird song, no wind, not even the usual skitter of squirrels or the snap of branches under deer hooves. Just dead silence pressing in on all sides. My GPS still worked, phone didn't. That wasn't unusual. I figured maybe a substation blew out or a transformer ruptured. Strange, sure, but not alarming. Still, I packed up early. Something in my gut told me it was time to head back. The first day of hiking went smoothly, but the next morning something was off. Landmarks weren't lining up. The slope of the hill I climbed felt wrong. The stream I crossed was running in the wrong direction. I checked the GPS. It insisted I was on track, that my truck was just over a ridge to the southeast, but no matter how far I walked, nothing looked familiar. By mid-afternoon, my food was low, my arms scratched to hell, and my confidence fully gone. The GPS still blinked steadily, lying to my face. I hiked fast, pushing through the undergrowth even when my boots filled with mud. That night, the darkness fell like a dropped curtain. No stars, no moon, no distant glow from towns or roads. Just the kind of black that felt alive around the edges. I kept the fire low and my rifle close, ears straining for any sound. I didn't sleep. I waited for morning, like a man waits for rescue. By midday the next day, I was ready to panic. I'd been following the GPS like it was gospel, but it was clearly lying to me. And just as I was about to shut it off and navigate by the sun, I saw it, flickering through the trees. A campfire. Real people. I moved toward it, cautious but relieved. I called out softly, once. No answer. So I crept closer just to be sure. There were 4 of them. All men, dressed in heavy tactical gear. Their packs looked too new, their weapons too clean. One stood at a folding table with a map spread out, marking something in red. Another had a thick notebook, flipping pages. A third had a scoped rifle resting against his knee. The fourth spoke into a shortwave radio I hadn't seen in years. That's when I saw the names. Not place names, people. Each one had a set of coordinates, arrival dates, and notes like last ping or off-grid confirmed. My stomach turned cold when I saw mine. My name, circled in black ink with Walker, solo in range, scribbled beside it. I stepped back, my foot found a branch. Snap. All 4 men stopped, one of them raised a hand. East side, movement. the one with the rifle turned. I ran. They didn't fire, not at first. They liked the chase. I could hear them crashing through the brush behind me, calling out in clipped, calm tones. Coordinating. Hurting. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Hid in a dry creek bed, under dead leaves. I lay there for what felt like hours, shaking, every muscle tense. Then I heard something. Not them, someone else. A voice, hoarse and scared, calling for help not far from where I was hiding. Another person. And then the sound of movement, boots pivoting, voices redirecting. New voice, possible second. Copy, zone shift, new tag. They followed the voice. I heard their footsteps fading, pushing toward the cries. Toward him. I didn't move until long after they were gone. The next day I climbed higher. Found a collapsed ranger shack near the base of a ridge. It looked abandoned, but I dragged myself inside. There was an old radio, dusty but intact. I flipped the dials until I found a signal, faint, repeating. Dead zone, clear, 2 tags recovered, zone reset in 72 hours. My breath caught. I listened again. Dead zone, clear, 2 tags recovered, zone reset in 72 hours. They weren't just hunting for sport. This was organized, routine, operation. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited, listened, and when the moon finally crept out from behind the clouds, I moved. I ditched the GPS. They were jamming it, feeding false data, luring people deeper. I followed the stars and the stream, moving only at night. Ate roots and bark, drank from puddles, slept under rocks. On the 4th day, I found an old fire tower, empty but still standing. I climbed to the top and saw it, far off in the distance like a dream, a highway. I moved with everything I had left. It took another 2 days when I finally staggered onto the shoulder and flagged down a trucker I could barely speak. He didn't believe me, not really. Who would? But he gave me a ride to a gas station with lights and noise and people. I collapsed in the bathroom and cried for 10 straight minutes. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't told anyone the full story, not yet. I tried reporting it, but the ranger station I mentioned was listed as decommissioned, and no one had any record of the area being patrolled. The maps I saw? Gone. The name list? Gone. Even my GPS logs somehow corrupted. But I know what I saw. Last night, I picked up a scanner radio, just to see, just to be sure. Around 3 a.m., through a wall of static, I heard a familiar voice. Dead zone, clear, 1 tag recovered, new arrival detected. They're still out there, and someone else just stepped into the dark.